Hi, welcome to another episode for all you frequent listeners and to you new listeners. We are going to be going into this terrain of sacred relationship. One of our top listened to episodes was the very first one that we did. What is sacred relationship? Today we're going into beyond the ordinary, how sacred relationship redefines modern love. And for Courtney and I, this is such an important place to just keep revisiting. It's been a few years since we touched this specifically, like what is it? And what we found is there's a lot of relationship advice out there that is good and also highlights a lot of hyper individuation and a lot of like do it on your own and do it like heal yourself. And what we're inviting is something completely different. Relationships from our vantage point don't need to be this place of pain and turmoil unnecessarily forever. We're inviting sacred relationship, which is this terrain of actually allowing the relationship to deepen, and where we can evolve together. And Courtney always does such a beautiful job of orienting around this place. So maybe, for all the listeners, can you give us the big perspective of what sacred relationship is?
Yes, thank you. And thanks for acknowledging my capacity and my gifts. That feels so nice. If I had a tail, I'd wag it right now. Yeah, sacred relationship. For me, sacred relationship it's like another frontier of relationship that we reach where we know ourselves enough and we are in that deep practice of self-love and self-sovereignty enough that now we actually can show up for the sacred we. We can show up for the sacred togetherness. So, I'm devoted to myself. I'm devoted to my own awakening. And I love myself so much. And I want to awaken into love and experience love so much that I then am going to move into the practice of surrendering into a bigger love, a bigger wisdom that is the shared space between you and I. And to me, sacred relationship then not only requires us to be really devoted to our own awakening and our own growth, it requires us to surrender into a bigger love and moment to moment, not abandoning ourselves, being in touch with ourselves, but then feeling into the bigger need of a relational space and what that relational space needs, which for me requires a much higher level of maturity, a much higher level of capacity to hold more pieces than just my own piece, and requires a willingness to stretch into more and more growth, love, capacity, attunement. And it's sort of a humbling journey too, because I have to be willing to again and again refine and grow in my capacity to relate and to learn about you. And I'm doing that not to appease you. I'm doing it to serve love that ultimately brings more love to me and ultimately brings more love to life. And so in a big way too, what sacred relationship is and what we stand for is there is a higher version of love that can exist, that can be practiced and learned, that doesn't just get us through the day or make our life pretty good, but actually creates more love in the world, creates more health, creates more vitality, and ultimately allows both of us, to become more of who we are. So, the other template of relationship can be, relationship is hard, relationship is a struggle, where it's always going to be that way, which on a level maybe, but the struggle can be held in something so much bigger and grander that can awaken us and clear the struggle, clear space. And then the other thing of sort of this belief that we have to, like you said, be hyper independent, and that any togetherness or we space is codependence. And what we're here to say is no, you can be radically sovereign. It actually takes radical sovereignty to be able to come deeply into the together space and the we space. Because you have to know and have so much trust in yourself and in your partner's connection to themselves to be able to surrender into the togetherness. And I think this is this great, amazing paradox that sacred relationship is about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so good. Yeah, in my previous life before discovering sacred relationship and was more aware of just relationship and looking around at examples of relationships, I used to believe that just being married for a long time is a success. Like I used to see these couples who were like, we've been married for 50 years or 60 years and if I were to be discerning, not judgmental, but be discerning of some of those relationships, I would say not all the examples I've seen in my journey were thriving examples. I'm like, well, I don't know if that sounds like a really enjoyable 50 years together, if it's like just coexisting under the same roof and really deep, actual codependent dynamics. I know for me, I felt afraid of long-term relationships because of some of those examples. And what I love about sacred relationship, like my definition or my orientation around it, is building a deep, intimate relationship, sovereign relationship with God, spirit, the universe, whatever that is, and trusting in this dance between two people, this biological, studied and proven place of we're stronger together. So it's bringing this sovereign relationship to God and bringing that relationship to the sacred we space and knowing that my evolution and my deepening relationship with God and with myself is going to happen through leaning into partnership, practicing moving towards consistently, moving into that together space. And in that place, like both people get to evolve in a better way.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when I look at my arc of relationship, I feel and what I have seen around me, there's sort of this level of conscious relationship where, well, there's if I think of 3 levels of relationship, there's relationship where it's just unconscious living, like based on your patterns. You're not really consciously working with the relationship. You're just doing your patterns with all the assumed this is what relationship is because that's how your parents were, or this is what's around you. You don't even know. And then the second stage is, this is hard. This is hard. I am mad at my partner about this, and this needs to change, and this feels uncomfortable, and we're doing it, but it's crunchy, and we're together, and then we're not together. It's like messy, right? Messy, and that I think that's a part of it. We have to learn how to move through that place. And then there's another space that you can arrive at that I'm experiencing in relationship with you, Mike, which is where there's more and more levity and love and resource that's holding the relationship. There's actually an awakening energy moving through the relationship, allowing it to evolve as we are refining our relational skills and learning very deeply each other and what each other's nervous systems and souls need. And it's like a greater and greater coherency and realness that then is allowing our relational system to flourish. And there's like a whole other energy that's working through us that's bigger and guiding us. And this continued commitment to tending that and to surrendering to that and serving that and then watching what happens.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. I feel like in this place, when I look at my life before really truly believing sacred relationship is in service to me, and I was more orienting from the place of, I just got to do it, like heal myself and my own personal work. I used to love the word personal development, and I just would really go deep into personal work, but then what was confusing it, I'd feel so strong and confident with the development that I would make in my own, but then I would go and try to relate with, my previous partner and, now you partner and get super triggered. So I'm like, this is really confusing. I'm super confident on my own, but then I try to come here and now I feel this big. I feel so small. And what I've loved about sacred relationship and really understanding and believing that this is the expedited path for my awakening, my evolution. When I say awakening, what I'm actually meaning practically is me evolving and maturing in my nervous system, in my thought processes, so that I can take my dreams and aspirations in this heart and being and bring them into life actually. So when I say awakening, it's like getting to know my God-given gifts and being in the practice daily to bringing them to humanity to make this world a better place. Because for me, that's fulfilling. And what I like about this is sacred relationship and learning how, like you named it, the relational skills, learning how to build relational skills to stay connected, to move towards each other, to get to know the terrain of difference. Like, wait a minute, we are very different. How do we thrive together in the difference and see the value in the differences instead of seeing the differences as a problem and wanting to squash them or build stories around them of how they're such a big problem,
Yes.
which I feel is a really common way of relationship. Like you talked about in those 3 ways, it's kind of that second phase of relationship. And for anyone listening, there's no judgment if you're in the first or second phase. This is the pathway of evolution and you can't bypass it. And that's been humbling. You can't just jump into fully living sacred relationship.
We've tried. And then we face plant.
Yeah. And that's the mess. And then we're humbled we are in phase 2 in this moment. That's what it is. We're in the you, me, this is hard, messy, and then working through it and then arriving for a moment into phase 3.
Or I'd say now we're at the point where we can go weeks.
Yeah. Sometimes a few months.
Yeah. Where we're moving in that.
Yeah.
And then we fall out a little bit. We fall back to phase 2.
Yeah.
Get clear. Whoa, what's happening here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so curious to hear from you what's been your journey to discover what sacred relationship is for you and why it's of service?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I knew for so long that I wanted to deeply journey sacred relationship. And in my previous relationship, we did journey that in ways. And I was tasting it in ways. And I remember when Mike and I met, we were so clear, we want to journey sacred relationship. We committed to that. We made sacred vows to each other that that's what we were doing. And then inevitably all these patterns started coming up and crunch and we were getting stuck. And the place, now that I look back, I wouldn't have known this at the time, but where we were getting stuck is both of us had done a lot of individual work. We were getting a lot of support on our own work. But then what was happening is as we came together, it was like 2 individuals smacking into each other. And then we're used to getting support. We're like, let's get support. So we started calling in different therapists and supports. And none of it was touching on what we were needing to move through what we were hitting. And at the time we didn't know, we didn't understand what it was. But until we met our beautiful guide, Clara Cunningham, who we've actually interviewed her and her partner earlier on in the podcast, if you want to look back, and a beautiful couple. And
living sacred relationship.
This is what I was going to say, is that we start working with her and suddenly something new is happening. There's some sort of movement happening. And what it was she was really guiding us into the togetherness. So instead of just, okay, Mike, this is your work. Okay, Courtney, this is your work. And let's work on Mike's here and what's happening for you, Courtney. She was really there holding our relationship and guiding each of us into the relational space, into the togetherness, and guiding us to notice it, to tend it, to love it. And what was different, this was the key that was like, oh, is she is living sacred relationship. She's in a sacred partnership that's thriving, that where they're in love, where they've held space for each other to evolve and grow, and they deeply know each other's patterns, and they're in service to the world together. And what we realized was it was palpable. It was a transmission through her. And she so was able to guide us in certain places where we'd get lost. She'd guide us into that together space. And when we'd say, well, how are you doing that? And she said, because I'm living it. I'm in it. I know this terrain because my partner meets me in this way, and we cultivate this together. And suddenly it was like a place that neither of us had ever moved through before in relationship. We were moving through because we were being held by another couple, and now actually have met him and had space held by the both of them. But in a way, whenever she was doing sessions with us, it was actually their relationship that was holding us. Like, it was Clara's skill and her as a person, but it was also their relational field that was holding us and guiding us into a different kind of relationship. And before that, what was happening, we started to realize, was we were being supported by therapists who maybe they're in relationship, but not a lot of togetherness. There's a lot of valuing of independence, or being supported. For me personally, I had one therapist, beautiful, powerful therapist, a somatic therapist, but I could feel there was a lot of struggle and difficulty in her relationship. And that would come through in her guidance, right? It was almost like whenever she would guide, there was always this sense that relationship is hard and you won't really be able to move through that. And you kind of just have to accept that, was sort of the energy, because my projection is that's what she was experiencing. So that's what she was guiding me in. Also having experiences with having therapists who were so focused on, okay, Courtney, what's happening for you? Just keep doing your work. And then that's what's going to bring more health to the relationship. But ultimately, the layer I was needing to move through was hyper individualization. I did know myself really well. I was getting really good at my work. But the next step was moving into relational work. And it wasn't until I actually met someone who was embodying that and living that I even knew what that was, that there was this whole terrain, right? That there was the individual work, but then there's the relational work, which is this whole other magical space. I'd love to hear your version of that.
Yeah, well, and just to touch that, it's the mature space. I didn't know that back then. I used to get all kinds of support. I'm the kind of guy, I'm always got one to many coaches, therapists. I'm a very supported man and have been for a long time. But the support, my experience back then is when we first got together, I had so much individual support, and I didn't realize the impact of some of the messages coming from that individual support, because and I didn't know this at the time. I didn't even know to look for this. I had no idea. No one told me, fine, hey, if you want someone to support your relationship, find somebody who's thriving in it, and whatever they have to offer, join that. Be supported by that, because that will be your quickest gateway to actually you also living. That guidance didn't come in. So I had this individual support, and so good though. That's what was confusing, is a lot of it was really good. And what I remember is having a session with Clara, because, we're very privileged in having the teachings and the wisdom of our failed marriages previous to meeting each other, and to learn from those. And we knew at the beginning of ours, we wanted to be supported. And so we were trying to, like Courtney described, like you described, we tried to find support, and it just wasn't really leading to the helpfulness of moving through some of our sticky places and patterns. And I remember having a session with Claire. I remember it so vividly. We're on the couch in the living room, and I remember being called out in a place that I would touch in my individual sessions, where usually the individual session would be yeah, this is a place where you need a boundary with your partner, and yeah, this thing is happening and they are doing this to you. And I'd be yeah, that's right. And so I would go back to the relationship in the previous way. And then I would like create almost more space and more distance because I felt like you were hurting me and I had to stand up for myself. Not that that doesn't happen in some places. But what was different about this session with Clara is I was in one of those places where I remember the previous support going, yeah, you know, kind of the energy of, yeah, it's her stuff. And I was in one of those places. And then I remember Clara going like, well, Mike, it's interesting. I'm looking at your face right now and your face looks really cold. And it like the energy that I'm feeling from you is kind of like this. And I remember feeling so baffled because I'm like, no, this is the place. Like, I didn't think of this consciously, but in the moment I was awakened to this actual mirror of where I wasn't serving our relationship. And I remember being bit pissed of like, wait, this is no, Courtney's the one doing the thing, is like the you know, we call this the adaptive child. My adaptive child, I was like, this is her fault, or she's doing something, why are you giving her shit? And then I remember being grateful of like, I didn't even know that. I didn't know I was in a defense strategy right now. Thank God she pointed it out. I remember finishing that session and looking right at you and us talking about like, that was so good. Like, what was that? That was so helpful. And we felt really connected. Like, we ended the session really close. And then for me, I was like, oh, there's something here. She really advocated for we, and she held me accountable for where I wasn't in the we.
Where both of us
Yeah.
aren't.
Yeah, where both of us weren't. And that changed my entire reality.
Mm-hmm.
From that moment on, I got really fierce and clear of we need to have our relationship supported by someone living this. And I started to then have these experiences going back to individual support where the part that used to feel so cathartic no longer did. I'm like, wait a minute. No, that message though is actually going to create more of a wedge between my partner and I. And that's no longer helpful.
And it's so subtle. Like now that I'm aware of it, when I'm like, oh, it's so subtle. It's this like this way where the other person doesn't know they're doing it, whether it's friends or a therapist and I did it when I was a therapist and I didn't know, is where I would just feed the person's individual needs, right? And not bring awareness to, so what's the relationship needing? What do you know, like this, like Clara does so well, is like, what could you offer Mike in that moment? So instead of being like, yeah, Mike, he's doing that, or, you know, it sounds like Mike is really in his stuff and that you just need to really, it'd be like, what do you think would help Mike? Mm-hmm. You know, how could you move towards him and support him? So not feeding the part of me that's like, yeah, Mike, but feeding the part of me that's like, well, what could you do about that, Courtney? You know, and she opened this whole vista for me of like, no matter what's happening, there is a relational way to move towards. Whereas before, I remember this distinct feeling that there was this underlying feeling of like, well, if I'm right, then, and he won't hear me, then there's nowhere to go but to take more space. And inevitably, I had watched this happen in relationships. We're getting help, but it's actually making more and more space and emphasizing more and more of how different we are. And now I understand as a therapist on the other side, when I'm working with people and I watch it, where before when I would really focus on the individual, they'd be coming to me and talking about their partner who won't hear them, or, you know, their partner that won't receive them. And I'm like, yeah, ouch, that hurts. Hey, have you tried sharing that with them? What happens when you move towards and you try to guide them into what you're needing? And where I actually hold them accountable over and over to how they are showing up for the relationship. And people at first will be like, what's happening? Because they're so used to being fed in the individual, like what you're needing. And at first they'll kind of like squirm and it's uncomfortable and like, ugh. Or even go into the story of like, well, that's not going to work. And I kid you not, people, I have watched it. Every time I hold that as a therapist, the we space, and in this curiosity, people go away and they come back and they're like, oh my gosh, We just moved through this place we've never been able to move through. We've been getting support for so long and we've never been able to, what's happening? Oh my goodness. And you know what it is? It's this. It's actually being supported in the together space. And I wouldn't know how to hold that for people if I wasn't practicing that in daily life.
Mhm.
Like I wouldn't be able to track that and hold that for people without experiencing it in daily life, that you're my partner doing that with me and that we're tracking that and building that muscle.
Yeah.
Whereas before it just kind of felt like I was always trying to support two different people to try to fit together like a puzzle piece. And like, it's like, oh yeah, your needs are different. And, oh yeah, this is tricky. And oh yeah, he is being mean. And like, it would almost like be like that. And it would feel a little bit like, God, what is the way through? And clunky. And now it's like, we are learning how to tend together.
Yeah. It's so important that in this, thank God, like, I just thank God there's someone like Clara and, her partner here, Iman, living it, because we could have gone years of bashing up like we first got together, just where the imprints were, bashing up against each other. But when there's an advocacy, when someone is advocating for the sacred we space, and this is what we do with our clients, this is what we do in our couples community, sacred relationship ultimately is building this relationship to the soul of the relationship. There's this third entity that gets created when two people come together. If we both believe that we're in service to the soul of the relationship, that beautiful wisdom gets to come down and feed our sovereign experience and dance in it. But if we believe that it's just us as individuals living together and there isn't that third piece, it's like we can get lost. It's like fighting against and you, me.
What Stan Tatkin talks about is in our neurobiology, it's inevitable that if we only orient from individual, that we will create more and more distance and space, because humans, if they don't have something else holding them accountable, they will just become more and more selfish, not because they're bad, but it's just like wired into us.
Yeah.
We have to have something else that we are accountable to.
Yes.
That we are intentionally tending in order to bring ourselves into actual love.
Yeah. And I know for me, I've needed someone holding that field
Yes.
for me for a certain period of time until I could get the evidence in my nervous system and all the places my defense strategies scan for where it's not safe to be in we space because it's codependent or all these beliefs I used to have. Like our brains will look for the things that where the connection's a threat.
Mm-hmm.
And I needed someone repeatedly in our sessions with Claire, as an example. That's where it first started weaving in. Of like, yeah, and you guys are doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are doing great. Oh, yeah, it's really just naming it for what it is. Yeah, this is a sticky place. You guys will work through it. Look at all these places you've grown. Look at all these places you've figured it out. And wow, I love how you're looking at each other. And there's like mirrors and feedback of the we regularly, which totally changed the inner belief of, oh no, I get it. Sacred relationship is about being in each other's care. Mm-hmm. This isn't about me being in my own care and I will navigate how you impact my world. It's like, no, this is a we world. And my world gets so much better and stronger if I actually orient to the we world.
Oh, I remember this one moment where in other places this would get fed. I was like, oh, like there's this place that Mike's not meeting me. And she was like, oh yeah, I can see with what Mike's working through, there's a place where he can't quite meet you in the way you're needing it yet. And he's changing and he's evolving and he's doing it. And can you hang out and wait and love him in the journey of learning how to meet you there? And it was like, oh, Well, because of course you're doing the same thing on your side, is the places where I'm not quite meeting you yet and I'm not right. And it's like the acknowledging, yep, Courtney's not quite meeting you. Mike's not quite meeting you yet. But do you notice how you're both learning? And can you love each other in the process of that? And that had been missing for me before, is that can you love your partner in the process of learning how to love you? Right?
Yeah.
Oh, right. It's not just about me being upset and being validated and that I'm not being met. It's actually, I need to learn how to love my partner in the process of this, and that he actually needs to learn how to love me in the process of this. Oh, that's love.
Yeah. And that's where the awakening and the evolution happens. That's where we actually get to be allies to help each other grow up and mature.
Yeah.
Because for those of you listening, every single one of us has an adaptive child and has a wise adult. And when we're in adaptive child terrain, what that means is underdeveloped parts of how our brain functions. And so we will perceive this threat when it comes to vulnerability. Like adaptive child parts of us are very you, me consciousness. They're very black and white. They're very right and wrong. So when we're in that, spoiler, you're in adaptive child. You're in a kid part of you that didn't fully get the experience of the sacred we and nurtured through that to evolve into understanding we are so much stronger together to see that bigger perspective. When we're in the wise adult, it's very solution oriented, very curious, and able to hold an individual experience and then figure out what's needed for the organism, what's needed for the relationship, can hold space for difference, and has patience and is regulated. That's wise adult. We want to be in that frame of how our brain's functioning in that wise adult so we can evolve. Because what I'm so grateful for in our relationship is when we get to understand we both have these adaptive kids online, the work is getting to know each other's lived journey and what's actually embodied and what's still being worked on in the process of awakening as individuals, and being allies and curious, just as curious about your journey of what you're evolving into as my own. Like, if I want to give you and offer you helpful relational ingredients for you to keep evolving, I got to know your journey just as well as my own, so that I know what I'm looking at when we talk about certain things, or you get triggered, or there's that look. Like, what is that look about? What is it actually about that's not me? And so I can own the parts that are me, but then also be an ally to help offer over the things that we're missing that created whatever that adaptive child defense strategy was.
Mm-hmm. Well, and for me, this is so empowering, because suddenly we move into a place that there's always something I can do to better tend the relational space.
Always.
Whereas in the old paradigm, there was like an impasse, like, oh, there's no way through this. Now it's like, oh, there's always something. There's always something. And, one of the things that Mike and I have really had to learn too, right, is to be, well, first of all, now our mentors, the people we learn from, all of them are living sacred relationship in some way. And that's because that's the paradigm that we're wanting to embody. And so even I was thinking about it, even my business coach, right, was in sacred relationship. And that both business coaches that I felt drawn to. And it's because there's a certain frequency, there's a certain type of living, there's a certain type of way of showing up in life that comes through that sacred relationship journey.
Even the languaging that
Yes.
people who are living it, and it starts to be, it's subtle and maybe not always noticed. Like when I look back, wouldn't maybe notice it, but living sacred relationship, it's now seen in the subtle places of what words were used, or that's interesting, it was said in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just think it's really important to understand who we're supported by in these vulnerable places will impact whatever it is we integrate from it and what we learn from it and how we put that out into the world.
Yeah, because there's sort of two qualities I see. One is that when you are being supported by people that are actually journeying sacred relationship or relating with them, there's always this sense of really respecting the relationship. So it's like when they're relating with me, they understand they're relating with my relationship too. Right? Even if my business coach doesn't meet you, there's this reverence and respect for Mike and our relationship. not just, oh, here's Courtney. When it's the individual, there can be a bit of a like, almost like Mike's not there and there's something there that happens that shapes the relational space. The other piece that I would say that people that are in sacred relationship end up embodying is they understand the level of maturity that you have to embody in the walk to be able to hold relationship. There's a level of responsibility taking and integrity that comes in that is a whole other level, because it's like that person in their daily life is tending to a we space, not just themselves. And there's a huge amount of capacity and maturity that requires to do. And I'm not saying that people that are not in sacred relationship don't have maturity and integrity, but there's a certain flavor. There's a certain flavor to relationally practicing every day in your life that gets woven into your body and into your ecosystem that is palpable. And, we also find this in our friendships. Hey, We've been very intentional about, that the people we let in closest, or the people that we really choose to journey close with, is moving towards the couples that are intentionally embodying sacred relationship. And this shows up in how they talk about their partner. It shows up in how they process about what they're learning in partnership. And an example is, one version is, someone complaining about and blaming their partner and saying nothing's changing and it's them and they do this and they do that. And the other version is, we just love going on double dates with some of our sacred relationship couples, where we're all just like, ooh, what are you learning about? Ooh, this is the new edge. Oh, we just had this fight and then we were able to show up like this. And then it transformed into this whole new level of intimacy. And these are the kinds of things we're sharing about and excited about. And oh, this is what we've learned how to navigate that place, and is very life affirming and life giving and reinforcing of the health of relating together.
Yeah, and woven in there, which is a key indicator of this realm of sacred relationship, I love with our friends, is, oh, what so-and-so, like the partner, what so-and-so offered that was different was this.
Yeah.
And this is how it landed for me. Oh, and then I really recognized in this moment, I took a breath and I paused where I would normally say this. And instead I realized, oh, here's that little boy in me. And instead I came back with, oh yeah, this is my, I love when we get to dance. This is why it's so important for us to be surrounded. I call this our inner circle. We have our inner circle of friends, and 95% of them are living and breathing sacred relationship also. Because, and this goes to the good old personal development world that I still love and appreciate so much, is we become our 5 closest friends. And so if I want to live a life of sacred relationship, and I want to highlight for you, for those of you that are listening, that may not be your journey. That may not be something that you really want. If you're a returning listener, my sense is you are. But if you're a new listener, you're like, God, this sounds terrible. It doesn't need to be your way. I'm only speaking to the people where this is your way. For me, I want to evolve through the realm of relationship. I want to become so skilled and mastered in relating with difference with another human, devoting long term, and becoming the man I was born to be in that dance, so that it's not just me off in my own space, figuring out how great and amazing I can be or what I can develop as a human being with no tension, with no contours of other. So when I think of this inner circle, it's so supportive, because in the past, me not having that filter and that discernment of, wait a minute, in honor and reverence to the soul of our relationship, we do need to be surrounded by people who are living this. Because if I don't have that boundary, if I don't have that filter, what I used to experience was I'd have a hard time, like in my previous marriage. And I'd connect with somebody who I would consider like a best friend. But instead of holding me accountable to places where I may be contributing harm to the relationship, it would be more of a, oh yeah, how could she do that? And it would be this energy that would actually build my defense strategy from adaptive child, instead of inviting me to step into my wise adult.
Mhm.
And that's been a game changer for me. And that's meant, losing some friendships, but it's also been a big part of what's led to us living more and more consistently a thriving relationship, because we get to celebrate it. We get to celebrate it with all these people in our inner circle, where it's like, oh, you get it. Oh, I can share about my partner here. And, maybe this is a piece to speak to there of why it's also so helpful. If I have a piece that comes up in relationship to you and it's not, I'm in it. Like, let's say I'm triggered. You trigger the shit out of me. I feel hurt and I am in a adaptive child part. And there is a story going on in there of like, Courtney, this. Having an inner circle of friends, if I go and I reach out to one of my closest friends who's living sacred relationship also, what support now looks like is I share about this piece. They hold space for my venting or just getting out the data of what Courtney did or like how Courtney hurt me. And then what I love about this is it's held in oh yeah, I imagine that hurt. Oh, and then knowing Courtney, I imagine it was like this and what was happening for her. And there's always a inclusivity of, yeah, I wonder what was going on for her there. And oh yeah. Oh, and then wonder what you contributed to that led to this. Tell me more about that. And there's always this like guidance and support and care of that sacred we space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really sweet. My one friend, because right now I'm like parenting a toddler, so I don't get a lot of airtime to process things because the toddler's there. But I was with a friend and he was napping and I was like, hey, can I process this one really unevolved part of me that can come up in relation to Mike that's not really about Mike, but this is its story. I just need someone to hear its story.
Yeah.
And she was like, what do you need from me to hold you in this? And I was like, I need you to keep in mind that it's one part and it's not the whole story. And it's just like a little piece that might not even be true, but just like see it and hear it. She's like, okay. And then I shared it and she was like, yeah, I can see how you feel that way. I can see that. And she really validated that. And then she was like, and you're in a beautiful, amazing relationship where you're being met in so many ways. And I was like, yeah. And it felt so good because I wasn't going to share that part until I knew that the other person could actually hold it as that and wouldn't start to feed that. That part just needed a little airtime. It just needed to be like, I just need to be seen. But for the other person to really hold the amount of love and beauty and goodness that is in my relationship. And then there's this little piece, But in the past, that little piece would get like festered and fed and given food and get bigger. And now all of a sudden I'm leaving from my friend. And I'm like, yeah, I am going to take more space from Mike because he is doing that, and then it would feed. It would get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah. And you know what? I am going to go back and I got something to say to him. I'm not going to take his shit anymore. And it's like sometimes there's those moments where it's like to call out a pattern, that's helpful.
Well, I had insight in there as I was sharing, oh, I'm needing to ask for this. Oh, this part is needing me to advocate for this a little more, right? Like there was insight, but it wasn't like I'm going to go tell Mike how this is his fault. It was, oh, I see how I need to help voice this a little more.
Yeah, it's so important. It makes me think of, the clients that I work with, often I'll attract clients that are in partnership and they're wanting to learn the practice of sacred relationship. And we are working one-to-one. And so an orientation, and this is where I'd say I've noticed the biggest amount of transformations with my clients, is me understanding that it's my job and my responsibility to always hold the soul of the relationship. Even if we're just doing one-to-one work, it's always tending and being curious of who the partner is and what's alive in their world. And I wonder, what their patterns are, not just for the person. And what it makes me think of is, I have this one client that's coming up in mind right now where, God, man, before we started working together, it was big conflict, toxic relationships. And what was new in the work, and I remember her appreciating it at first, a little like ruffled, some ruffled feathers, where she would share this really big piece where, big rupture, and felt really hurt and really like disrespected, and meeting it and acknowledging it, and then following with, I wonder how this is tied into your pattern. You know what this makes me think of? Oh, how your father used to do this, or, oh, how this has just kind of been a theme, hey? Like, oh, a few partners have done this thing. And then I remember just even naming that kind of brought in this, like, what, wait, like you're supposed, no, like, fuck him. Like, and it's like, I don't think this is about him. I think this is about your imprint. And then me starting to bring in more directly. Yeah. And like, I remember with this client asking this question when they were processing this thing about being really hurt. Did you ask clearly for what it was that you wanted? Well, no, you should just know that. But this is it. Because there's a lot of terrain where that's the moment where couple or where coaches or therapists, if they aren't living sacred relationship, could lose somebody into an unhelpful path and not be in service to their evolution. If it's like, yeah, screw them. And if that's validated,
or just, yeah, can I say what usually would be the thing that maybe somebody would say there? It sounds like your partner is not really supporting you in your evolution.
Yeah.
It sounds like your partner is maybe getting triggered by you wanting to grow and become more of yourself, and they're not able to meet you in that or to receive you in that.
Yeah, or emphasizing the uninvolved reality. Not that this isn't true from the triggered place of like, oh wow, they really aren't respecting you, or they really don't care about what you need there. But what's
versus, it sounds like they're a bit triggered.
Yeah, and the game changer, I remember with this client when I first started doing this, of like, oh man, this is it. Of like, I wonder if it was clear to them what it was that you actually needed. Well, no, you should already know. Yeah, but that isn't the adult way to approach it, because there's places where if we just assume, they may not actually know. It might not be clear what it is you're needing or how you need it or when you need it. Have you asked? And then I remember it was like the defense dropped, and it was like, oh, I guess I didn't. And then the next day, I remember getting an audio message. Oh my God, Mike, I went and I just said clearly what I needed, and oh my God, with all these, he met me in the most beautiful way. And then this is what he did. And then he did that. And then he did this. And oh my God, we had the most incredible love. It's just this beautiful thing. And they're like, there's the new. It's like holding the person accountable of where they're in service to the relationship and where they're contributing things that might not be helpful to get to know. In sacred relationship, our game is, let's get to know what is helpful and in service to the relationship, to the connection, to the other person, because that is in our enlightened self-interest.
Yeah.
To learn that.
Yeah. And so, in whole, it's like sacred relationship is where we're devoting to the we space together and learning how to cultivate bigger love. And if I look at, how I understand this is that then that grows, like our capacity to cultivate and serve bigger love in our work, to serve bigger love in our community, to serve bigger love in parenting. And it's that willingness to become more and more mature, to hold more and more realities, and to feel into the journey is, what does Courtney need? What's needed for the whole? And that ability to feel both and dance in that. And what does Mike need? And what is Cedar needing? And what's going to serve more love here? And letting that initiate us. And, I know for Mike and I, our bigger, like if we can zoom out even bigger, our bigger vision of this is the more people are living that, there's more love on the planet. There's more capacity to move through conflict on the planet. There's more capacity to hold space for what's needed for the whole. And, ultimately that's like what we're inviting us into. And in that, what we really want you to feel into is, do you have people in your world that are embodying sacred relationship? Do you know couples that are embodying that? Have you thought about that before? Have you ever been supported by by people living sacred relationship, reflect. Are the people supporting you? What is their experience of relationship? Recently, I was doing a discovery call, and the person was really having the insight that they had been doing a container with another coach who was a sacred union coach. But then he was realizing, wait a minute, they weren't actually in relationship, and realizing there was something in the humanness that they were needing that wasn't happening in that container, not because there's anything bad or wrong with what that person was offering, but there was a limitation because they weren't actually in the practice of it. And this is our invitation, is get curious about that. Are your friends intending to live that? Are they living that? And what is the relationship quality of the people that are holding and supporting you?
Yeah. And so the invitation in this place is, hearing a little bit of what sacred relationship is. The invitation is spend some time reflecting and maybe journaling. Is sacred relationship something that you are wanting? Is your heart drawn to it? Is it a desire? Because then that gives you the clarity of the direction you're going. And then you can implement, what Courtney's sharing here as a next actionable step of, which I'll add to in a second, just to make it maybe even simpler to understand and look at it this way. If I want to learn how to play basketball, I'm not going to go to somebody who's played soccer their whole life. I'm going to go with somebody who's like been playing basketball their whole life, and they're still playing basketball, and they can teach me and speak to me and give me feedback based off of them playing the game. And I don't think for me anyways, I've never heard of anyone talking about that when it comes to relationship. Like, who's playing the game of sacred relationship? Who's playing the game of thriving relationship? To get coached and mentored and guided from that. This is why we birthed the Together podcast of we couldn't find the podcast to support us in what it was when we decided to be on this journey. So we're we're learning. So we're going to go learn and implement and practice all the things and bring it to you guys listening so that you can also thrive, because we've been blown away by this. And, if this is really landing or hitting or, poking and provoking some places, a helpful practice can be to go deeper on what Courtney's sharing here is pull out pen, put it to paper, spend some time journaling and maybe being real with where you're at right now. Who are the people you go to the most for advice, for support? Who are your closest friends? How do they talk about partnership or relationships? And start to do a little bit of an audit to build in some different discernment of, oh, right. Because we want, what is actually happening? What's the message that is coming across? If you're already living partnership right now, you want to make sure that you are having the people that are supporting you, whether that's a therapist, a coach, or your family, your friends, whoever it is, that they have the language that we've been talking about, that they do care about, your partner and what's happening for them, that they bring in that language, that they bring in those curiosities, those questions. They hold you accountable of what's going on for you, or what did you do, or what did you contribute? And I'd encourage you journaling through that and maybe writing a list of who are your 5 closest supports to you being in a relationship, and what are the ingredients that are coming from there. No judgment, just getting to know. What are the themes? How do they speak to the relationship, to the partner? Do they have those ingredients of sacred relationship? Are they living it? Just to know where you're currently at, to start to then feel into, maybe if all 5 are in this advocacy of, you're not doing anything wrong, it's all them, screw them, then maybe we need to, maybe you need to consider shifting that and starting to bring in some different ways of supporting your relationship so that it can't move in a good direction.
Yeah. And I want to just invite you to just reflect on the frequency too, right? There's the words that someone is delivering, but then there's so much information that just comes through a transmission from what people are living. And that's true of everything, right? There's a place where we can guide people, and then there's a place where we're embodying something. And it's literally in the sound of our voice. Mm-hmm. It's in the look in our eyes. It's in the way our nervous system feels. And so there's this transmission that happens that is not through words or intellect. it's through feeling, through attunement. And so if you're wanting to learn relationship, move towards the people that are living that, the kind of relationship you want to be living, and let yourself receive the transmission.
I'm so glad you added that piece, because that's such a strong piece I've noticed in my journey, is starting to deepen that relationship with insight, intuition, the gut. Like, oh, wait a minute, I did have this gut feeling that maybe I shouldn't be talking to my mom about this, or, this person about this. Oh, I think I need to, and learning how to listen to that and trust that is a really important piece.
Well, and this is why the Together community is so cool, that this online community that we have with couples, because not only then do we hear again and again, like, it's so helpful to receive support from a couple, that we hear this, but also we're getting all these mirrors of other couples that are on the journey, and the frequency shift that happens because you're feeling all these couples with this intention is really profound and powerful. Yeah. And is part of it. We need the mirrors. We need the reflections. And one of the things Mike and I keep being blown away by is because both of us do individual work, right? We work with people individually. We work with couples individually. But when both of us are in the room working with a couple or working with a group, we are blown away by what can happen. We are like, whoa, the work is so much easier. The download that comes through is so much bigger. And the lessons land so much deeper and with more ease. And we watch it do its work. And we're like, this is amazing every time.
Yeah. And then we get to be what I call Shiva sitting front row, being witness to an evolutionary love, like to something like the amount of times we've heard, we've had this pattern for 20 years. We had this I have a client that was like, we've been married for 50 years and this has been a pattern for the 30 years they've been together. And it's incredible to watch a pattern dissolve with one of these. Sometimes it's one of these ingredients just being supported by a couple in a certain way that gives new information that does dissolve the pattern.
Which is the magic. It's the magic of sacred relationship. This is when we're getting into magic, miracle, God, spirit, coherence.
Yeah, call it woo-woo, call it whatever you want. It's real. Like the evidence and the transformations are real. And there's just so much potency in really orienting to the sacred we space. There's just so much more vitality in there, so much more health. There's a growing up, a maturing and evolving, because it does require skill. It does require practice. So what we're talking about, we've been in years of practicing this, and we fumble and we go back to our old patterns, and then we're like, oh yeah, remember? Oh yeah, back into the we, co-regulating, repair as quickly as possible.
What does your partner need to hear right now to come back into connection?
Yeah, share this need from a place of desire. Speak in I statements. All of these little principles that we weave into the day-to-day ends up being so much more enjoyable. And so an encouragement is, there are other spaces, I'm sure, out there. And if you feel drawn, we have our Together online community. It's an incredible space to be around other couples that are doing the dance, that are practicing, that show up to the calls, that are doing the practices that we do in the calls. And maybe there's someone else out there offering something similar that there's a deeper resonance to. My encouragement for you, if you're listening, is just find somewhere where someone is living it, breathing it, and learn from them. One of the greatest pieces of advice that I got from one of my coaches is, whatever it is that you're wanting, go find out where someone's done it, doing it, and just sign up for all their things, do everything that they have, and learn it. Learn it from somebody who's really figured it out. And so that might be us, that might be someone else, but I encourage you to do that, because that will bring you to what it is you're actually wanting.
Find your network of other sacred relators. Yeah. And we love the feeling of us all building a field together.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you all for tuning in to this beautiful dance of sacred relationship and learning and growing with us. Please let us know what comes up. whatever platform you're watching this on or listening to, go in the comments. Let us know your thoughts. We love reading them. We do respond to them. And if you got value from this, do us a favor. If it's the platform where there's 5 stars, go give it a 5-star rating. If it's on YouTube, hit the like, hit subscribe, hit the bell, and look forward to seeing you on the next one.